I did a hardcore Nuzlocke of Pokemon Diamond using only the 3 Sinnoh starters, Torterra, Infernape, and Empoleon. In a Nuzlocke, if a Pokemon faints, it's dead forever, and with 3 encounters this is more prevalent than ever because these are the only 3 Pokemon I can use. The rest of the rules for this playthrough are shown here, and a more detailed look is in the description down below. Let's do this. The first decision here is picking a starter. This only matters in determining what starter and team my rival Melvin uses. I decide to go with Turtwig so that Melvin has Infernape, the best starter. And by using the power of magic, I obtain the other 2 starters, Piplup and Chimchar. These 3 buggers are best friends with a goal in mind: kill Melvin. I'm just kidding, their goal is to kill Cynthia and become champion instead. At this point, I'm sure you've noticed the numbers on the right side of the overlay. Well, have you ever wondered what the best starter is out of these 3? Because I have. Uno, Dos, and 3 will be competing in points in major battles by KOing opponent Pokemon. 2 points for a knockout and 1 for an assist. At the end of the run, whoever has the most points wins the run and is the best starter. Who do you think is going to win? Place your bet in the comments below, and while you're down there, subscribe. With that out of the way, it's time for the first major battle against Melvin. This is good for 3 because he's able to get an early lead by KOing his lead Starly with some bubbles after taking some quick attacks. Second and last is Chimchar, who hit a scratch before I hit a bubble doing a third. I take another scratch before my bubble high rolls and takes it out, winning me the battle, netting 4 points and giving him a head start against his fellow comrades. Soon after, Dos, and only Dos, evolves into Monferno. My guess why the other 2 don't evolve is that Monferno's fighting type gives him a shot at beating the first gym leader Rourke. Speaking of Rourke, it's time to challenge him. He uses rock types, and even with 3 types that are super effective, it still proves to be a challenge. He leads off with his Geodude, and I lead with Dos. I hit a priority stab Mach Punch, doing around half as Geodude just misses a rock throw. Anyway, a follow-up Mach Punch on the next turn gets the kill, netting Dos 2 points. Second is Onyx, and I hit a Mach Punch as he just goes for a Screech. A follow-up Mach Punch leaves him in the yellow before I get hit with a rock throw. Rourke heals, and a crit Mach Punch leaves him in the red. I then decide to switch into Uno on a Screech. Uno just gets the kill here with an Absorb after tanking a rock throw. Last is Rourke's ace, Granados, who manages to get off a Leer before I hit a Razor Leaf, doing massive damage and leaving him in the red. Granados then hits a Pursuit on the next turn for some massive damage before I get the kill with a Razor Leaf, taking him out and winning me the first gym badge of the playthrough. After this, I evolve both of my other teammates into their second awkward teenager forms, though they won't get a second type until much later. This brings me to my fight against the first Galactic Commander, Mars. She leads off with Zubat, and I lead off with Dos. I switch into Uno on a weak Leech Life. I then can switch into 3 on a Bite. 3 goes for a bubble, doing a third before taking a Leech Life, doing a whopping 2 HP. I then can go for a Metal Claw, leaving the bat in the red before I take another Leech Life. This means I can go for one last Metal Claw to take it out. Mars' ace Purugly comes in, and it's a hard scratch, meaning a Metal Claw does a sliver. Purugly then goes for another scratch, and a Metal Claw leaves him in the yellow. After getting hit by a feint attack, I can go for a Metal Claw, bringing Purugly down to a berry. From here, I decide to switch into Dos on a scratch. I can go for another priority Mach Punch on the next turn to get the kill, winning me the battle. At this time, it's time for the second badge against Gardenia, the Grass-type gym leader. Or you could call it what it is. 6 points for Dos. Flame Wheels knock out her Cherubi and her Turtwig. Her ace Roserade actually survives a Flame Wheel in the red and heals up with a Citrus Berry. Roserade then hits a Limp Magical Leaf before a Flame Wheel gets the kill on the following turn, winning me the battle. Also, I love this line from Gardenia. Like, your last Pokemon's almost dead, and I still have 3 left. Some people. In the building over, it's time for the next Team Galactic fight against Jupiter. She leads off with Zubat, and I lead off with Dos, but he gets switched out for 3 on a Bite. A Metal Claw does decent damage before I tank a Wing Attack. I go for yet again another Metal Claw, leaving him in the yellow as I tank another Wing Attack before I get the KO with a Metal Claw. Her Stuntank comes in, who gets off a Smoke Screen before I hit a Metal Claw for decent damage. I get hit again with another Smoke Screen, but luckily I connect and manage to hit a Growl, lowering its attack. Stuntank then poisons me with Poison Gas, and I end up missing my Metal Claw. This means I have to switch into Dose on a smoke screen. I of course miss my flame wheel on the next turn before I get hit with another smoke screen. The turns repeat myself with me missing my flame wheel and getting hit by a smoke screen. I then get poisoned. This means I gotta go ahead and switch into Uno on a smoke screen. Stung Tank then gets off another Night Slash before I can go ahead and go for a Curse to boost my stats. Stung Tank then gets off a Poison Gas, which of course poisons me before I get off a Tackle, doing a third as I take passive damage. I get hit by another smoke screen and I miss my Tackle. From here, I decide to switch into Dose on a missed Screech. Ironic. This means I can go ahead and go for a Flame Wheel, which activates its Citrus Berry, restoring health. Stung Tank then hits a Screech before a Flame Wheel leaves it in the red, and then it hits another Screech. This means I can go ahead and go for a Priority Mach Punch to take it out, winning me the battle against the second Team Galactic admin. After this, I meet Cyrus, who is one of the opening speeches of all time. Got news for you, buddy. It isn't 1653 anymore. In the next city, Veilstone, I head up to the department store to pick up the TM for Natural Gift, which, depending on my health berry, changes the type of the attack, making it a great move for the upcoming fights. And with that, it's time for the third gym badge against Maylene. Her lead Pokemon is a Meditite, and I lead off with Dose, who gets a Flamethrower, which just melts Meditite. Second is a Race Lucario, who could be scary if not for me just outspeeding and getting the KO with a Flamethrower. Third and last is Machoke, and I go for a Flying type Natural Gift, doing around 50% as I get hit with a Foresight. This means another Flamethrower melts Machoke, winning me the battle and giving Dose 6 whole points. From here, I make it to Pastoria City where a battle against Crasher Wake awaits. His Gyarados could be an issue, but I think I have a play here. Anyway, in our fight, Wake leads off with his scary Gyarados, and I lead off with 3. Gyarados hits a weak Brine before I can get an Electric type Natural Gift off, but it only does around half of its HP. This means Gyarados hits another Brine before I hit a weak Ice Beam. This prompts Wake to heal up before I'm able to go for a Bubble Beam for some weak chip damage. On the next turn, I tank a massive Bite before hitting a soft Ice Beam. Gyarados gets off a Brine before an Ice Beam brings it into the red. On the next turn, I get hit by a Swagger before an Ice Beam actually manages to get the kill. Second is Quagsire, so it's off to Uno on a Mud Sport, which is useless. Luckily, since Quagsire is a 4x weakness to grass moves, one Razor Leaf is enough to get the KO. Last is Floatzel, who gets off a Brine before a Razor Leaf leaves it in the yellow, meaning it restores health with its held Citrus Berry. On the next turn, I tank a Pursuit before a Razor Leaf just gets the KO, winning me the battle and the 4th gym badge. Honestly, that could have gone so much worse because Gyarados had Dragon Rage, meaning 3 could have died. This brings me to my fight against Melvin. His lead Starly just go down to a couple Ice Beams apiece from 3. Third is Floatzel, so I switch into Uno, but I get hit by a Pursuit, which does basically no damage. Floatzel then outspeeds, and it's a weak Aqua Jet before Razor Leaf gets the one-hit knockout. Fourth is Monferno, so it's back off to 3 on a set of Fury Swipes, which also do minimal damage. On the next turn, Monferno manages to outspeed and hit yet again another set of Fury Swipes before I'm able to go for a Brine on the following turn, which just takes it out, netting 6 points and Uno just 2 points. Shortly after this, all 3 of my starter Pokemon evolve into their final forms, getting out of their awkward teen stages. And that's gonna matter, because it's time for the 5th gym badge against Fantina. She leads off with Drifbloom, and I lead off with 3. Drifbloom outspeeds, and it's a critical hit Ominous Wind for a Sliver before I go for a Surf, doing half. After tanking a Limp Gust, I drown the Hot Air Balloon with a Surf, netting him 2 points. Second is Erasmus Magius, who outspeeds and hits a Psybeam before I hit a Surf, doing around half, bringing her to her Citrus Berry, restoring her HP. Miss Magius then gets off a Confuse Ray before I hit a Surf, leaving the Witch in the yellow. This prompts Fantina to heal back up to full HP, and I hit myself in confusion. Miss Magius then outspeeds, and it's a Shadow Ball, which brings me down to my Ayapa Berry. Luckily, I get off a Surf, doing around half of its HP, but since I'm low, I switch into Dose on a Shadow Ball, doing massive damage. I then get off a Flamethrower, leaving her with 1 HP, but all she does is hit a Razor Leaf, meaning a follow-up Flamethrower gets the KO. Last is Gengar, and I hit a flamethrower doing massive damage to it as I get hit by a poison jab that would have just flat out killed if it got a critical hit. But since it didn't, a follow-up flamethrower out on the next turn gets the KO, winning me the 5th gym badge, netting 3 points and Dose 4 points. And then it's time for a fight with Melvin. He leads with Staravia, who 3 just snipes with an Ice Beam. Second is Monferno, who actually manages to outspeed here and hit a Brick Break doing massive damage before I get the KO with a Surf. Third is Heracross, so I switch into Dose on a Night Slash, meaning I have to snipe the bug with a Flamethrower on the following turn, getting the kill. Fourth is Buizel, and I decide to go for a priority stab Mach Punch before I tank a Swift, doing just 13 of my HP. This means a follow-up Mach Punch on the next turn gets the KO. Last is Roselia, who just goes down to a single flamethrower, netting Dose 6 points and 4. This brings me to my fight against the Steel-type gym leader Byron. Both his Bronzong and Bastiodon just go down to a couple of flamethrowers and Mach Punch from Dose, netting him 4 easy points. Byron's third Pokemon is a Steelix, so I hit a close combat that lowers my defense and does not kill, meaning I tank decent damage from a Gyro Ball. I then go for a Mach Punch, leaving Steelix with a Sliver, and then I get hit with a Dragon Breath that paralyzes. This means I gotta switch into 3 on the following turn as Byron heals up. Luckily, on the following turn, I go for a Surf, drowning the Rock Snake, winning me the 6th gym badge of the playthrough. And then for some reason, Team Galactic decides to blow up a lake for some reason, not too sure why. This brings me to my third Team Galactic fight against Admin Siren. For starters, his lead Kadabra is just killed by a bite from Uno, whose Bronzor goes down to a couple of bites, and his last Pokemon, Toxicroak, goes down to an Earthquake, winning me the battle. Immediately after this is a fight with Mars. Her lead Golbat goes down to a couple of bites from Dose, her Bronzor is killed by a flamethrower, and Empoleon drowns her demonic cat with a couple of Surfs, netting everybody 2 points. Shortly after this, it's time to fight an Ice-type gym leader with no name. Anyway, her lead Snowbird, Abomasnow, and Sneasel all get killed by a flamethrower apiece from Dose. Her fourth Pokemon is a Medicham, and it's not an Ice type, but I still decide to go for a close combat here, even though this thing is part Psychic type. It, of course, doesn't do anything, but luckily Medicham just hits a weak Ice Punch, which also doesn't do anything even with my defenses lowered. Luckily, on the next turn, I outspeed and I hit a flamethrower, which just kills Medicham in one shot, winning me the battle against this undisclosed gym leader. From here, it's off for the first Cyrus fight. His lead Murkrow goes down to an Ice Beam. Second is Golbat, but he too goes down to an Ice Beam, leaving just Sneasel. Sneasel actually manages to outspeed here and hit a Slash before I hit a Metal Claw, doing massive damage in retaliation before I activate his Berry. Luckily the Berry didn't restore much, so after taking a quick attack I can just take it out with a Metal Claw, as well as earn 6 points for 3. After watching Saturn attempt to control space or time or something like that, it's time to fight him. Luckily all 3 of his Pokemon just go down to a couple of flamethrowers apiece from Dose, winning me a straightforward battle. Is it just me, or does Dialga's whole space thing just look like those carpets that you see at the arcade in the 90s? This brings me to my fight against the double battle with Mars and Jupiter along with Melvin. I lead off with Uno and he leads with Munchlax as the planetary duo leads off with their Bronzors. I fire off a Crunch as Bronzor 1 hits an Extrasensory. On the following turn, Munchlax just goes for a Screech. I then hit a Crunch to take out Bronzor 1 as the other Bronzor once again just goes for an Extrasensory. Munchlax goes for a Stockpile here, and then Stuntank comes out, so I switch into 3 on a Poison Jab that poisons Munchlax, as Bronzor once again goes for an Extrasensory for another smidge. It doesn't matter here because Munchlax restores some HP with a Stockpile. Stuntank then plays dirty here and hits a Smokescreen into Munchlax before I hit a Surf, critting into Stuntank, bringing her down to her Berry and doing half to Bronzor. I also hit Munchlax here, but who cares because he gets confused and misses a Body Slam. Stuntank then hits a Flamethrower into 3 before I get off another Surf, which actually manages to kill all 3 Pokemon on the field, including Melvin's Munchlax. You love to see it. Mars and Jupiter then send in their Golbats as Melvin sends in his Infernape, who outspeeds and hits a Punishment before taking an Air Cutter that actually manages to crit into me. Golbat 2 then hits another air cutter that brings Infernape deep into the yellow. This means I can go for a Surf, killing Infernape, and brings both bats into the yellow and red HP ranges respectively. Melvin then sends in Weasel, who gets confused but breaks through and hits an Iron Tail, stealing the kill from 3. Guess that's what I get for killing 2 of his Pokemon. Golbat 2 then hits a massive Sludge Bomb into Weasel, doing massive damage and poisoning. My Surf into Weasel actually manages to crit and kill Golbat, so that means I've killed 3 of Melvin's Pokemon. Anyway, last is Purugly, and Melvin sends in a Staraptor, who actually gets off an Intimidate but just goes to sleep. I can go for a Surf here, which actually crits and kills Purugly. And it also kills Staraptor too, so that means I've killed every single Pokemon that Melvin sent out. I do win the battle though, which is pretty cool. Melvin here then abandons me, meaning I have to fight Cyrus on his own. His lead Honchkrow just goes for an Embargo and a Steel Wing before an Ice Beam leaves him with a Sliver. Cyrus then switches into Weavile, who takes an Ice Beam fairly well. This means he gets a Night Slash for some chip damage before I hit a massive Metal Claw, getting the attack boost. This does mean he restores HP with a Berry, however. Cyrus then heals up, and I miss my Metal Claw. Luckily, a few turns later, I connect with another Metal Claw to take it out. Second is Gyarados, so I decide to switch into Uno on a massive Giga Impact. Since Gyarados has to rest on the following turn, I decide to set up a Leech Seed, so I get some passive recovery and I chip away at Gyarados' HP. Gyarados then gets off another Giga Impact before I hit a Razor Leaf, doing massive damage and stay healthy with my Leech Seed. Since Gyarados has to recharge, a follow-up Razor Leaf gets the kill. Honchkrow comes back in, meaning I have to switch out into Dose as Cyrus heals up back to full HP. On the next turn, I hit a Flamethrower, doing massive damage as Honchkrow just goes for an Embargo. This means I can roast the bird on the following turn with a Flamethrower. Last is Cyrus' speedy Crobat, who manages to hit a Bite before I hit a critical hit Flamethrower, leaving it with just a sliver of HP. Cyrus' Crobat then hits a Bite that of course flinches, meaning I have to tank a Cross Poison before I'm able to go for a Flamethrower on the next turn, which actually manages to get the KO and win the battle and dismantle Cyrus' operation. From here, it's off for the final gym badge against Volkner, and Uno is angry. Dose and 3 have sizable margins, and he wants revenge. Volkner doesn't stand a chance from Uno's bloodlust, and he gains himself 8 points from the massacre and sweeps his entire team by himself, winning the 8th and final gym badge of the playthrough. Something I just want to point out here, we need to see what happened to other gym leaders. I love how Jasmine has a cameo even if we don't get to battle her. And just like that, I'm at the Pokemon League. My 3 starters have worked really hard to get to this point. Here they are with their final movesets, leveled up to the final level cap of 63 to match Lucian's Bronzong. But before I can go ahead and challenge the Elite Four, it's time for one last battle with Melvin. He leads off with Staraptor and I lead off with Uno. I hard switch into 3 on a U-turn that baits in Infernape. He outspeeds and hits a Flamethrower, doing decent damage before I get the KO with a Surf. Second is Heracross, so I switch into Dose on a Rock Slide, doing decent damage. A Flamethrower on the following turn then picks up the kill here against the Junebug. Third is Floatzel, and this thing's water type isn't doing me any favors. I hard switch into Uno on a Brick Break. Floatzel on the next turn then outspeeds and hits a Crunch before I get a Razor Leaf that gets the clean one-shot. Staraptor then comes back in, so I switch into 3 as Staraptor goes for yet again another U-turn, which baits in Snorlax. I hit a Surf, doing decent damage as I get hit with a Body Slam. 2 more Surfs here then pick up the KO as Snorlax does, thanks to my Steel type. Staraptor comes back in, and wouldn't you know it, he goes for a U-turn, baiting in Roserade, who just gets one shot by an Ice Beam. This just leaves Staraptor and he is nowhere to U-turn, but I am pretty low, so I do have to switch out into Uno, who is able to get the KO with a couple of crunches, winning me the battle. Now, this does mean that Dose and 3 are neck to neck for points going into the Elite Four. I would say that, but Aaron just kind of makes things really easy for Dose, and he just picks up 10 free points by KOing all of his bug types with Flamethrowers, winning me a surprisingly easy Elite Four member fight. Second is Bertha, who uses ground types, meaning I can just KO all of her Pokemon with a couple of Razor Leafs from Uno. This is great for him because he just gained 10 free points against his fellow brethren. Third is Flynn, and this is going to be a team effort. He leads off with his Rapidash, and I lead off with 3. Rapidash goes for a bounce, meaning my natural gift misses. Rapidash hits a weak bounce that of course paralyzes, but I break through and get the KO with a Surf. Second is Infernape, who hits a disgusting Thunder Punch and I get fully paralyzed. I then switch into Dose on a Mach Punch for a Sliver. I take another Mach Punch before I fire off a close combat, leaving Infernape in the yellow. This also prompts Infernape to heal up with a Berry. I take a third Mach Punch on the following turn, leaving me on 17 HP before I get the KO with a second close combat. Third is Lopunny, so I switch into Uno on a weak Fire Punch. An Earthquake brings Lopunny in the yellow as he just goes for a failed Mirror Coat. And while we're on the subject, why is Lopunny on the Fire type specialist team? Drifloon and Steelix make sense because they both have to do with something being hot. Okay. Anyway, fourth is Drifloon, who hits a critical hit, Ominous Wind, and gets an Omni Boost, meaning my crunch does less damage than I thought, meaning I have to switch into 3 on a failed Will-O-Wisp. Drifloon then hits an Ominous Wind before I hit an Ice Beam, leaving him with a Sliver. This then prompts Flint to heal up, and my Ice Beam does around half of its HP. After tanking another Ominous Wind that does not crit or get an Omni Boost, a follow-up Ice Beam is enough for the KO. Last for Flint is Steelix, so I switch into Uno on a missed Rock Tomb. On the next turn, I'm able to go for a Razor Leaf for a smidge as Steelix sets up a Sunny Day, which doesn't really do him any favors. An Earthquake on the next turn brings the Rock Snake to the red before he hits another Rock Tomb. After tanking a Screech, a follow-up Earthquake gets the KO, winning me the battle, netting Uno 5 points, Dose 2, and 3 points. Last for the Elite Four is Lucian. He leads off with Mr. Mime, and I lead with Uno. Mr. Mime sets up a Reflect, meaning my Crunch does around half. Mr. Mime then hits a hard Psychic that lowers my special defense before Crunch gets the KO. Second is Medicham, so it's off to 3 on a soft Ice Punch. Mr. Mime outspeeds and hits a hard Drain Punch before I hit a Surf, leaving Medicham with 1 HP. This prompts Lucian to heal on the next turn, but luckily my Surf gets a high roll and I manage to take it out. Third is Alakazam. I switch it to Dose on a hard Focus Blast that would have just straight up killed if it crit. I then hit a Flamethrower doing around half as Alakazam hits an Energy Ball for a Sliver. This means a follow-up Flamethrower on the next turn gets the KO. Fourth is Girafarig, so I switch into Uno on a hard Shadow Ball. Girafarig then hits a Psychic, leaving me on just 5 HP before I'm able to go for an Earthquake on the next turn, leaving him in the red. This means I gotta switch into 3 as Lucian heals up with a full restore. Girafarig then hits a Shadow Ball for 20 HP that lowers my defenses, but I hit a Surf that just drowns him. That just leaves Bronzong, who takes massive damage from a Surf, causing him to heal up with his Berry. On the next turn, Bronzong gets really greedy and decides to set up a Calm Mind, boosting his special attack and defense. This means a Surf leaves him in the red, but he just hits a Limp Gyro Ball and a follow-up Surf seals the deal and takes Lucian out. There's a lot to unpack in that fight because I did risk a lot of crits and I did not deserve to win Deathless, but I don't have time to worry about that because I gotta fight Cynthia. Her team is stacked. My Lodic is a bit of a problem because he has good coverage and her Garchomp is a menace. It hits like a truck and has great coverage. The rest of her team is very scary as well. The only way if we win is if we sack a Pokemon, and I don't want it to come down to this. Let's do this. In our fight, Cynthia leads with Spiritomb, and I lead off with Uno, who fires off an Earthquake, doing half as I get hit by a Dark Pulse. This means a follow-up Earthquake on the next turn is enough for the KO. Second is Milotic, so it's off to Dose on a resisted Ice Beam. On the next turn, I nail Milotic with a close combat that doesn't kill, but all Milotic does is just set up an Aqua Ring in return. This means a follow-up close combat on the next turn gets the KO. Third is Gastrodon, so I switch out into Uno on a Stone Edge, meaning I can just go for a Razor Leaf on the next turn to get the KO. Fourth is Roserade, who actually manages to outspeed and hit an Energy Ball, bringing me down to just 27 HP before I'm able to go for an Earthquake, leaving him in the red. This prompts Cynthia to heal, and I go for a Crunch, doing half. This means Uno has to die. Even though he had the lowest kill count, he was still pretty useful and pulled it together in the end. He tanks a Sludge Bomb to the face and dies. R.I.P. buddy. I switch into Dose, who is able to go for a Flamethrower on the next turn, which just gets the KO. Second is Garchomp, and this thing is terrifying. I know what I have to do. Dose hits a weak Flamethrower before being killed by a Dragon Rush. R.I.P. Just kidding, he survives, and I hit a Mach Punch, and then he dies to a Giga Impact, which actually crits to rub some salt in the wound. This does mean I get a free switch into 3, who is able to snap guard chop out with an ice beam. This just leaves Lucario, who is able to outspeed and hit an aura sphere, bringing me down to just 14 HP before I go for a surf, leaving him in the red. Cynthia then heals, but I get a critical hit surf, baby, to take Lucario out, winning me the battle and the run. Thank you so much for watching. I want to give a shout out to Flygon HG for making a challenge like this in Kanto. I'm sure I'll get a couple of comments asking me to do this in all regions, but I don't know if I will. I chose Sinnoh because all 3 starters get decent types. Maybe in the future, but as of right now, the only region I really plan on doing this is in Kalos. Oh, and before I forget, even though he's dead, Infernape wins with just 71 points. Even though he won, it got close at the end, with Torterra even managing to get 23 points in the league. Thank you so much for watching, and remember to have fun playing with Nuzlocke. After all, it's a self-set and posed rule for a kid's game. I'm Braylon Battles, and I will see you on the next one. Bye.